Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of PeopleSoft interview series. In today's episode, we are going to discuss three interview questions regarding records in PeopleSoft, along with their answers. We will also discuss the possible follow up questions, and while discussing the answers, we will cover quick tutorials to understand the concepts. So, without further delay, let us start the discussion. The first question is, what is translate table in PeopleSoft? So translate table allows you as a developer to create prompt tables or list boxes that have predefined values for your users to choose from. And this will make data entry for the user much quicker and accurate. For example, if we have a page in PeopleSoft and we have to fill gender information, so in that case, rather than making the user to type the gender, we can create a drop down menu, and in that menu, we can provide the gender values such as male, female, and unknown. By doing so, we are making the data entry quicker and more accurate. A follow-up question is how to create translate values in PeopleSoft for a given field, and what are the rules that we need to follow while creating translate values. So let us see a quick tutorial for the same. Suppose we have this employee page which stores the employee information, and we have a requirement to add a gender field here, and it should be a drop down field. So let us see how we can achieve this using the translate value functionality. We will create a new field in PeopleSoft which is called employee gender, and we will keep the length field name as 1, and we are planning to store three values for gender. So M for male, F for female, and U for unknown. So let us save this field. Now we need to provide the three translate values for this employee gender field. So to do that, we can go to this properties for this field, and in the field properties, we can see that we have the option called translate values. So here we can add the required translate values. For example, let's add the first value, which will be M, to indicate a male gender, and we have to make sure that this checkbox is not selected. So we have created one translate values. Similarly, let us create the translate values for female and unknown. So we have these three translate values created for this field. Now let us add this field to the employee record. Let us build the record. And finally, we will add the record field on the employee page. So as you can see, once we added this field, we can see a symbol of drop down here, and this will indicate that this field has the associated translate values. Now let us test the changes on the page. So if we open the employee page, now we can see that we have the employee gender option, and it has the three translate values as we have configured. So this is how we will implement the translate value functionality. Coming to rules for creating translate values, we must select the field type as character. As we can see in the employee gender field, we have selected the field type as character. Then the length of the field should be less than or equal to 4, which means it can be anywhere from 1 to 4. As we can see in the example, we have given the field length as 1. So this is a valid field in order to create translate values. As we saw that we can go to field properties, and from here we can select the translate values for the particular field. But let us say if we do not follow the rules, for example, the field length instead of 1, if I'm giving the field length as 5, which is breaking the rules, and now if I try to access the field properties, it will no longer show the translate values tab here. That means this field is not eligible in order to generate the translate values. Hence, we must follow the rule of field type and field length while creating the translate value. And the last point we need to consider is that number of translate values for a field should be relatively small. For example, for this employee gender field, we have a drop down and we have only 3 values to select from. This makes the data selection easier. But imagine if we have hundreds of values to select from this drop down, then creating a translate values is not a good approach. So we should have a relatively small set of values in order to create a drop down. The next follow-up question is, which table stores the translate values in PeopleSoft? PeopleSoft has provided a People Tools table called as PS item, and this table stores all the information regarding the translate values which are available in the system. For example, if we query this table, we get the information such as the field name for which the translate values have been created, what is the field value, what is the effective date, the effective status, what is the long and short name, when it was last updated, and the user to update the translate value. For example, we just created few translate values for a field called employee gender. So we can check the same in this table. We can see the pre-translate values which we created for this field called employee underscore gender, and this is the user who created these translate values. Another follow-up question is, give an example of delivered translate field in PeopleSoft. So we can give the example of the delivered field called PS yes no, and this field has 2 translate values, yes and no, and we can see that it's a delivered field since the last OPR ID for this field is PeopleSoft. Another follow-up question is, can a non-technical user or a business user make changes to the existing translate values? We discussed that as a PeopleSoft developer, we can go to field properties, and in the translate values section, we can make changes to the translate values as per our requirement. Of course, we can add new values or we can delete the existing values. But suppose if a business user wants to add a new value, let us say he wants to add a value called T for transgender. In that case, since he is not a technical user, can he do the same using PeopleSoft online page? So the answer is yes, we can do that, and let us see how to do that. So we can go to People Tools, Utilities, Administration, and Translate Values. So here we need to give the field name. In our case, it is employee underscore gender. So we can see the same set of values which are available for this field. So let us say we want to add a new value for gender called T. So in that case, we can complete the procedure from here. So let us save it and let us test the updated field in the employee page. So if we open the employee page, and in the employee gender, we can see that the new translate values have been added successfully. So this is how a non-technical user also can make changes to the translate values. One thing to notice that using this online page, we can only make changes to the existing field which has translate values, but we cannot create a new field and assign translate values for the same. The next question is, what are the naming conventions that we should follow as a PeopleSoft developer while creating records in PeopleSoft? So these are some examples of the naming conventions that we can follow while creating records in PeopleSoft. For example, if we are creating a record and we intend to use it as a prom table, then we can add a suffix to the record name and the suffix will be underscore TVL. Similarly, for SQL view, we will have a suffix underscore VW. For dynamic view, we will have a suffix underscore DVW. For work record, it is underscore WRK. If we are creating a sub record, then we can add a suffix underscore SBR. For query view, we can go with underscore QVW. If we are creating records for parallel processing, so those will be temporary tables. For them, we can add a suffix underscore TAO. If we are creating any audit record for an existing record, then we can go with the suffix underscore audit. And if we are creating some record to store the function definitions that we want to reuse in people code, in that case, we can add a prefix which will be funclip underscore to the record name. So the benefit of adding this naming conventions is that by looking at the record name and the prefix or a suffix, we can get an idea of what kind of record it is. We do not every time we do not need to open the application designer and check the record type. So this is one benefit provided by following the naming conventions. Another naming conventions that we can follow, and it is not just limited to records, but it is applicable on every PeopleSoft object such as pages, component, fields, etc. We should have some differentiation in the naming convention to differentiate between the delivered records and the custom record. So you can see that these are the four main tables to store the transaction data for purchase orders in PeopleSoft. So header, line, ship, and district. Now, these are the delivered tables. That means this functionality has been delivered to you by PeopleSoft. Now, suppose we want to create a SQL view. So it will just contain all the POIDs which are created on the current date. Now, if we take a hypothetical example that let us say we are working as a PeopleSoft developer in JP Morgan Bank, then we can use the name of our organization in the record name in order to make it distinguish from the delivered records. One of the most commonly followed practice for naming convention of custom records is to add three characters of your organization. So we took an example of JP Morgan. Then we can add JPM as a prefix to the record name, and we can create a record like JPM underscore PO underscore today. Now, the benefit of this naming convention is that by looking at the naming convention, we can understand that this is not a delivered record. This is a custom record which is built for the requirement of my organization. And the benefit will be that, let us say, if I need some information with respect to some record, let's say PO line, then by the naming conventions, we can understand that it's a delivered record. So we can get the required information on the people books. On the other hand, by looking at the naming convention of this record, we can understand that it is not a delivered record, it is a custom record. So if I need more information on this record, then we should find the related SOP document in our organization instead of going to people books. So this is the benefit of having naming conventions for your custom records. A follow-up question is that each time we create a record in PeopleSoft, we get a prefix called PS underscore. For example, if we are creating a record called employee data, then the final record name will be PS underscore employee underscore data. Then the question is there any way that we can remove the prefix PS underscore from the record name? So the answer to this question is yes, we can remove this PS underscore prefix from the record name. Let us see one example. Let us say that we are creating a record with these four fields in PeopleSoft, and we have a requirement that it should be a SQL table and the record name should be my underscore data. Now, if we build the record by the default setting, it will be ps underscore my underscore data. But if we want to eliminate the prefix ps underscore, in that case, we can go to this record type. Here we have this option called non-standard SQL table name. So here we will give the table name as my underscore data. Now let us save the record. Now let's build the record. All right. So the record is now built in PeopleSoft. Let us test if the record is available in database. So we will query with my underscore data. And if we run the query, we can see that the record is now available in PeopleSoft. We can use this record with my underscore data alone without adding the ps underscore. In this case, if you try to access the record by adding ps underscore my underscore data, it will say record does not exist because we have given the non-standard SQL name. So yes, we can remove the ps underscore prefix from the record name. The next question is, what is key, search key, and alternate search key in a PeopleSoft record? So key is used to uniquely identify a transaction in a PeopleSoft record, and this prevents us from entering duplicate entries. Let us see an example. Suppose we have a requirement that we need to store the employee information and each employee should have a unique employee ID. In that case, let us say that this is the PeopleSoft record which is storing the employee information, and if we want to make the employee ID as a key field, in that case we can click on this field and we can select the key option for this field. Now employee ID is a key field for this record, and we can verify this information in this option called use display. We can see that employee ID is a key field. Now let us build the record. Let us try to add an information for an employee with employee ID as 101. We could save this information successfully. Now let us try to add a new employee with the same employee ID. Now as we can see, we are getting the warning message here that the value you try to add already exists in the system, and as a result we cannot add a new transaction or a new employee with the same employee ID. In this case, we can only update the existing rows of data but cannot add the new row of data with the same key field. This is how a key field works for a record. Coming to search keys are used in order to provide the search criteria for transactions in your component. For example, we have this employee component, and on the search page we can see that we have a search criteria and we have these two fields called employee ID and employee name, using which we can perform the search operation. So for our employee record, we can see that we have an employee ID field as a search key. We can check this information here. If we go to record field properties for employee ID, we can see that it is selected as a search key. Now there is one more concept called alternate search key. So if you want to provide some additional fields as a search criteria apart from your search key, in that case you can go with the alternate search key. In our example, we can see that we have provided the employee name as an additional search criteria. So in this case, employee name is an alternate search key. We can check this in the record field properties and we can see that it is an alternate search key. A follow-up question is that can we make a non-key field as a search key for a given record? So the answer is no, we cannot make a non-key field as a search key. In order to make any field in a record as a search key, it must be a key field. For example, we can see that employee ID is a key field for our record. So this is why we have an option to make it as a search key. On the other hand, we can see that employee name is not a key field. So if we check the record field properties, the search key option is disabled. Similarly, supervisor is not a key field. So we can see that search key option is disabled for this field since it is not a. Another follow-up question is that can we make a non-key field as an alternate search key? So the answer is yes, we can make any non-key field as an alternate search. Another follow-up question is that suppose I have created a component, but for that component I am not able to see the search page. Then what can be the reason? For example, if we go to the employee component, then as soon as we click on the content reference, then we are directly seeing the first page of the component and we can no longer see the search page. Then what can be the possible reason? We have not selected even a single field as a search key, and that is the reason search page is not available. We can check this information in the employee record. We can see that this column indicates the search key, and we can see that none of this is set to search key. This is the reason search page is not displayed. Now, suppose if we make employee ID as a search key, and if we save the changes, now let us try to reopen the employee component. And now we can see that the search page is available for this component. So this is the requirement that in order to generate the search page, you must have at least one key as a search key. Alright guys, that's it for today's episode. If you found the content helpful, then please like this video. We are going to release episode 3 of this interview series in the next week. So if you are interested in the same, then please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.